He left me for his mistress, then I dropped the DNA test on the table. His face drained as the truth hit him. Would he own up to his lies or crumble? Hey there, welcome to today's story. Before we dive in, I'd love to know, what are you up to right now? Are you ready to hear something intense? Today's story takes us into a world of betrayal, secrets, and ultimate strength. The main character faces something no one should ever have to deal with, discovering that everything they believed in has been shattered. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where everything you thought you knew turned out to be a lie? Well, stay tuned to see how our character takes control of their life and turns things around. And by the way, I'd really appreciate it if you could help me hit 1,000 subscribers soon. Your support motivates me to keep bringing you more stories like this. Thanks so much. I had always believed I was living a dream. You know, the picture-perfect life that people always envy, where everything falls into place and the pieces just work. My name is Anna Carter. And for 15 years, I was married to Alex, a world-renowned surgeon, someone who built his career from scratch, a self-made man who had saved countless lives. Together, we had 2 beautiful kids, a sprawling home in the suburbs, and a future that looked unbreakable. People called us the ideal couple. At hospital fundraisers, Alex would raise a glass and say, "I couldn't do any of this without Anna." It was all a show, and I had no idea just how much of it was built on lies. But the cracks in our marriage had always been there, hidden beneath layers of success and smiles. I should have noticed it when Alex started staying late at the hospital, claiming the hours were long due to emergency surgeries. Then there were the golf weekends with colleagues that never seemed to end, and his growing detachment, both emotionally and physically. It wasn't until one night, while I was doing laundry, that I found it. A crumpled shirt tucked away at the back of his gym bag, stained with bright red lipstick. It wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate act. That moment, my world shattered. That shirt told a story I wasn't ready to hear. But instead of confronting him right away, I let the suspicion fester. I wasn't going to let myself fall apart. Not just yet. No, I was going to be smart about this. I had to make sure I knew everything before I took action. I thought I had a good marriage. Maybe I was naive. The perfect marriage, the perfect house, the perfect life. On the outside, it was everything I had ever dreamed of. Alex and I had been together for 15 years. We were the power couple in our social circle, the couple that everyone envied. We had the house, the kids, the vacations, and the seamless daily routines. It seemed like we were living a fairy tale, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt like I was just playing the role of the dutiful wife in someone else's story. But I soon realized perfection is just a well-crafted illusion. It all started to unravel slowly, like the first stitch of a thread being pulled from an expensive garment. At first, I dismissed the tiny, nagging doubts that crept into my mind. I was busy with the kids, with the house, and with our family life. But every now and then, something would catch my attention. Alex being distant, avoiding conversations about the future, suddenly working late more often, or taking mysterious calls late at night. It was subtle at first, so I convinced myself I was overthinking things. Then came the day I decided to dig deeper. I wasn't going to blindly accept the reality Alex had presented to me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe I had just been living in my bubble for too long, but I knew something had changed. One afternoon, when Alex left for work earlier than usual, I found myself walking past his phone on the kitchen counter. I hesitated for a moment. My heart raced, and I felt guilty for even considering it. But something in me snapped. I knew I had to know. I told myself it was just a harmless check. He'd never suspect it. I took his phone. Without his knowledge, of course. I'd seen his password hundreds of times, but I'd never needed to use it before. I wasn't the kind of person to invade someone's privacy, especially not my husband's. But when I unlocked the screen, my stomach twisted. The first message that caught my eye was from someone named Dr. Claire Patterson, a colleague of Alex's. "I can't wait to see you again tonight. We need to finish what we started last week." I froze. My mind raced. Claire. The name sounded so familiar. I had seen her at a couple of hospital events. Always so professional and poised. Never a hint of anything inappropriate. But now, the words on the screen shattered that image. Couldn't breathe. I quickly scrolled through the conversation, and there it was, hundreds of text messages detailing their affair. I thought I knew everything about my husband. I didn't. There was no denying it. This wasn't just a one-time slip-up. The messages were intimate, explicit, filled with plans to meet up when I wasn't around. There were even inside jokes, shared moments, things Alex had never mentioned to me. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was emotional, mental. It was a secret life I never knew existed, built right under my nose. But it wasn't just the affair that I uncovered. As I continued to scroll through his messages, I noticed something else. Something more disconcerting. Alex had been hiding financial transactions from me. I opened the banking app and my heart sank further. There it was, monthly withdrawals. Thousands of dollars. Money being sent to some mysterious company under Alex's name, Pinnacle Investments. I didn't recognize the company, but the amounts were hard to ignore. No receipts. No explanations. It didn't make sense. What was Alex doing with this money? Why hadn't he mentioned it? Why was he hiding this from me? I started to feel like the walls were closing in on me. I had trusted Alex. I had given him everything. My loyalty, my love, my belief that our life together was real. And now I was starting to see the cracks, the lies, the deceit. But this was only the beginning. I wasn't going to let it slide. Couldn't. I decided to confront him, but not yet. I needed to know more. I couldn't risk him denying it, playing it off as an innocent mistake. I was going to gather every shred of evidence I could find before I said a word. The more I uncovered, the more my heart broke. I started looking at our joint accounts, searching for anything suspicious. The money had been moving around for months, large sums of cash, unexplained deposits, and transfers. Some of it was going to accounts with names I didn't recognize. Was Alex hiding something bigger? Was there a deeper level to his betrayal? But it wasn't just about the money. As I dug into our finances, I began to uncover things that made my blood run cold. Alex had been making financial moves that directly impacted our family without even consulting me. Joint investments were liquidated without my knowledge. Accounts I had thought were secure had been emptied out. And it wasn't just the affair that made me question everything. It was how much of our life together had been built on deception. The truth wasn't just about a cheating husband anymore. It was about everything, the life we built, the children we raised, the dream we sold to everyone around us. I began to feel like I had been living in a dream, a beautifully constructed facade. A facade that Alex had carefully built to cover up his lies. And I was beginning to wonder if anything in our marriage had ever been real. I had spent years supporting him, managing our family, keeping everything running smoothly. I sacrificed my career for his. I had put my dreams on hold for the sake of our family. And now I was left with the wreckage of a life I had believed in. The man I thought I knew. The life I had built were all built on a foundation of lies. As the days passed, I found myself sinking deeper into a spiral of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. I felt like I was losing control, like I was watching my whole world crumble in front of me. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I wasn't going to let Alex control the narrative. I knew what I had to do. I had to confront him. But first, I needed the truth, and I was willing to go to any lengths to get it. Knock, knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story. But before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. I wasn't going to sit idly by and let Alex destroy everything I had worked for. The life we had built, the family we had raised, and the dreams we had both shared, they were all slipping away from my grasp. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. Every day I allowed the truth to fester. Every day I let Alex's lies go unchallenged. I was sinking deeper into a pit of doubt and despair. But I wasn't going to let this man, the one who had been my partner for over a decade, take everything I'd worked so hard for. So I began my own investigation. With my background in digital forensics and data security, I knew exactly where to start. I wasn't a stranger to technology, and I wasn't going to let Alex's web of deceit go unexamined. I had learned over the years to watch closely, and now, all of the knowledge I had accumulated was about to serve me in ways I never imagined. I had access to all of our shared accounts, business files, and even personal devices we had both used. What I uncovered was worse than I could have ever imagined. Alex had been siphoning off money for years, diverting funds from our joint savings account into an offshore account that was registered under his name. I thought I knew our finances inside and out, but looking at the transaction history, it was clear I had missed something vital. The withdrawals were frequent, often large sums of money, none of which were ever accounted for. Hundreds of thousands of dollars had disappeared without a trace. The money had gone into a shell company with a name I didn't recognize, Pinnacle Investments. First, I couldn't understand what was happening, but as I dug deeper, a horrifying picture began to form. At the same time, his private practice had been expanding rapidly. More and more patients were showing up at his office. But something wasn't right. The longer I analyzed the transactions, the clearer it became. Alex wasn't just gaining more clients. He was manipulating the system to line his pockets. I found invoices for treatments that never happened and medical records that had been falsified to cover up mistakes he made during surgeries. Patients who trusted him, patients whose health was in his hands, were being exploited for profit. He was risking their well-being to fund his hidden empire. The weight of what I was uncovering was suffocating. Alex had been deceiving me on multiple fronts: money, loyalty, and ethics. It wasn't just the affair that had shattered my world. It was the realization that he had been lying to me for years on a scale far larger than I could have imagined. The more I uncovered, the more disgusted I felt. But the thing that hurt most was the realization that my trust in him, my belief in our partnership, had been based on a foundation of sand. The life we had built was crumbling, and I was just starting to see the depth of the damage. The offshore account wasn't the only thing I found. There were dozens of other financial discrepancies, hidden transfers, unauthorized credit card charges, and unreported assets that Alex had stashed away in secret. His so-called success was built on deception. It was all a carefully constructed lie, and I was the last person to know. I began to see just how far Alex had gone to maintain his image, how much of it was a facade. I spent hours at the computer, piecing together all the information I had gathered. As I dug through his phone records, I found more disturbing patterns. Alex had been in contact with several people in the medical field, some of whom I had never met or heard of. Many of them had helped him cover up malpractice claims and falsify patient files to make his practice appear flawless. It wasn't just the financial fraud, there was a much darker side to Alex's actions, one that involved patients' lives, manipulation, and exploitation. It was at that moment that I realized I wasn't just dealing with a cheating husband. I was dealing with a man who had no moral compass, no respect for the people who trusted him, and no regard for the truth. His infidelity was just the tip of the iceberg. What lay beneath was far more dangerous, far more insidious than I could have ever imagined. As if that wasn't enough, I began to connect the dots regarding the money and the fake medical treatments. The more I looked into Pinnacle Investments, the more I realized it was more than just a shady business venture. It seemed to be linked to a network of corrupt medical professionals, a system designed to launder money from insurance claims and overbilling. Alex wasn't just taking money from me and our family. He was part of something much larger, something that involved hundreds of thousands of dollars and potentially dozens of lives. At that point, I couldn't ignore it any longer. Alex wasn't just cheating on me. He was destroying the very foundation of everything we'd worked for. Every lie, every secret he had kept from me wasn't just about his personal gain, it was about preserving the illusion of a perfect life that had been built on deceit. I thought about how I had once looked up to him. He had been the charming, successful husband, the doctor who saved lives, the man I had promised to stand by. I had believed in him, trusted him with everything, and now I was discovering that all of it had been a carefully constructed lie. The person I had spent 15 years with was not the man I thought he was. He was a fraud. I started feeling overwhelmed. The weight of all the discoveries started to wear me down. Each new piece of information was more disturbing than the last, and I couldn't stop. The need to expose him was growing stronger by the day. I couldn't just let this slide. I had to fight for what was right, for the truth. But what I didn't realize, what I couldn't see at that moment, was that this journey, this search for the truth, wasn't just about uncovering Alex's lies. It was about something deeper, something more important. It was about me reclaiming my own life, about finding the strength to face the truth, no matter how ugly it was. And as it turned out, Alex's infidelity was only a small part of the story. There was much more at play, something far darker, something that didn't just affect me, but our children as well. As I dug deeper into our finances, I discovered a terrifying truth. The kind of truth that shakes you to the very core of your being, threatening everything you once believed in. Our children, our beautiful twins, Olivia and Mason, were not biologically Alex's. The entire IVF process had been tampered with, manipulated in a way that I never thought was possible. I thought I had it all. A perfect life. A perfect family. I was so blinded by my own naivety that I couldn't even see the cracks that had been there all along. I had always trusted Alex with everything. Our future. Our children. And the worst part? He had betrayed all of it. I remember the moment I discovered the truth vividly. It was the middle of the night, and I was lying awake in bed, unable to sleep, my mind racing. I had been uncovering so many secrets, but it was when I stumbled upon a folder labeled IVF records hidden deep in Alex's file vault that everything came crashing down. My hands trembled as I clicked on the file, and there, right in front of me, were all the records of the IVF treatments. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at, but as I scrolled, the numbers and names started to make sense. The dates, the treatments, the medications all matched up with what I remembered, but there was one thing I didn't expect. Alex had arranged for anonymous sperm donors, not once but every time. The signatures on the forms, his, the doctor's, nothing was as it should have been. The truth was unmistakable. He had intentionally kept me in the dark. Our children, the ones we had celebrated with so much joy, were not his. They were the product of a decision he made without my knowledge, without my consent. My heart felt as if it had stopped beating altogether. How could he deceive me like this? The man I trusted, the father of my children, had taken away the very essence of what it meant to be a parent. This wasn't just a betrayal of love. It was a betrayal of parenthood itself. I had always believed in the sanctity of family. I thought that our bond, our children, were something we had both built together. But now it seemed like that was all a lie. It was as if I had been living in a house of cards. And Alex had taken one too many down. I couldn't keep this to myself. I had to confront him. I couldn't let this fester inside me any longer. But when I finally confronted Alex, it was worse than I could have imagined. He didn't even flinch. He was cold, calculating, as if he had been waiting for this moment. There was no remorse in his eyes, no apology in his voice. He stood there, unshaken, as if everything was perfectly justified. My world, everything I had believed about our relationship, started to crumble in front of me. I couldn't risk passing on my condition to them. You know how dangerous it could be, he said, his voice flat, devoid of any real emotion. Alex had a hereditary heart condition, something that had always been part of his medical history. It wasn't a secret to me, but I had never known how deep his fear of passing it on to our children ran. He said it as if it was the most logical thing in the world, as if he had done it out of some twisted form of love. But it wasn't love. It was control. It was selfishness. He didn't want our children to carry that burden, to face the same health challenges he had. But in doing so, he had made a decision for them, for us, without ever consulting me. It wasn't just the IVF process he tampered with. It was the entire foundation of our family. He had stolen the most sacred right I had as their mother, the right to know the truth about their origin. The pain of that realization was almost unbearable. These children, the children I had given birth to, the ones I had raised and loved with all my heart, were not really mine and Alex's. They were a result of a decision made in secret, a decision that had stripped away the truth of who they were. They were still my children, but the foundation of their existence had been based on a lie. I tried to hold back the tears, tried to keep my composure, but it was impossible. How could he have done this to me? How could he have manipulated not just me, but our entire family, all for his own selfish desires? But it didn't stop there. No. What Alex said next was the final blow, the one that truly shattered me. "You're not fit to raise them," he told me, his voice steady and cold. "You've questioned my decisions. If you can't understand why I did what I did, then you're not fit to be their mother." The audacity, the sheer arrogance of his words. How could he say that to me? How could he accuse me of not being fit to raise our children just because I questioned his actions? I had dedicated my life to them, to this family. I had sacrificed so much for their well-being, for their future. And yet, here was the man who had taken everything from me, telling me that I was unworthy. I didn't know what to say. How could I respond to that? How could I even begin to explain the deep hurt I felt? He had robbed me of everything, my trust, my children's legacy, and now even the right to be their mother in his eyes. And then I realized, it wasn't just about the kids. It was about everything. The love I had given him, the trust one had placed in him. He had manipulated me, used me, and now he was trying to control everything. My emotions, my future, and the future of our children. The betrayal wasn't just of parenthood. It was of everything we had ever built together. It was a betrayal of my trust, of our love, of the very foundation of who we were as a family. I stood there in shock, feeling like the world was spinning around me. I had always believed in Alex. I had always thought we were a team, partners in everything. But now I was faced with the truth. A truth I had never wanted to see, a truth that would change everything. But I couldn't let him win. I couldn't let him control the narrative of our lives any longer. I had to find a way to fight back, to reclaim what was mine, what was rightfully mine. And above all, I had to protect my children. I wasn't going to let Alex's mistakes define their future. They deserved the truth, and so did I. Hey, are you finding the story interesting so far? If you are, make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can continue the adventure together. The best part is just ahead. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. The lies, the deceit, the manipulation, he had taken everything from me, and now it was time for him to face the consequences. I had enough evidence to tear his entire world apart. But I wasn't going to do it in anger as much as it burned inside me to make him feel the pain I had felt. No, I wasn't going to play his game. I was going to dismantle his life, piece by piece, methodically, and with precision. I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions. And I would make sure everyone who had ever admired him would know the truth. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparations, every moment consumed by the thought of what I was about to do. I couldn't afford any mistakes. Every detail, every piece of evidence had to be perfectly aligned. It wasn't just about bringing Alex down. It was about reclaiming my own dignity, my life, and my future. I started by reaching out to a select group of people, professionals who could help me expose Alex for the fraud he was. I enlisted the help of a lawyer who specialized in corporate fraud and a former colleague of mine from the medical field who had insights into hospital operations. They were invaluable in helping me piece together the layers of Alex's misconduct. But even with all the information in front of me, it felt like I was still holding my breath. Every step felt monumental, and the fear of failure loomed large. The first part of my plan was to tackle the medical misconduct head-on. I requested a private meeting with the hospital's board of directors. They had always looked up to Alex, admired his accomplishments, and praised his leadership. I knew that bringing him down would not be easy, but I had no choice. The weight of the truth was too much for me to carry any longer. The meeting was set, and the anticipation built inside me like a storm cloud threatening to burst at any moment. The day of the meeting arrived, and I was as calm as I could possibly be, knowing that what was about to happen would change everything. I walked into the conference room, where the board members were already seated, exchanging polite small talk. I could feel their eyes on me, some filled with sympathy, others with uncertainty. No one knew the storm I had in store for them. No one knew that the man they had trusted and revered for so long had been living a double life. I took a deep breath and began. I'm here today because I have evidence that proves Alex Carter's gross misconduct. The man you all know, the one you've trusted, has been involved in a series of unethical practices. And I have the proof. I presented the evidence, piece by piece, financial records showing the embezzlement of hospital funds, doctored medical records that Alex had altered to cover up botched surgeries, and email chains revealing his collaboration with shady pharmaceutical companies. The air in the room grew heavy as I laid it all out, the faces of the board members shifting from disbelief to shock to anger. This is just the beginning, I said, my voice steady but filled with the force of everything I had uncovered. Alex has been siphoning money from patients, falsifying medical records, and using his position to further his personal interests at the expense of countless lives. The silence in the room was deafening. Some of the board members looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Others were visibly shaken. The room was no longer filled with admiration for Alex, but with an unsettling sense of betrayal. It felt surreal, as though the walls were closing in on me. For so many years, I had believed in the man Alex had shown the world. But now I was seeing the truth, and it was uglier than anything I could have ever imagined. The board members didn't know how to respond at first. But eventually, one of them, the chairman, stood up and demanded that all of Alex's activities be suspended immediately. The others nodded in agreement, and the conversation turned to how to handle the legal ramifications of Alex's actions. It was clear that the hospital would have to distance itself from him, and soon. The authorities were notified and an official investigation would be launched. But I knew this was just the beginning. I had made my move, but I wasn't done yet. I wasn't going to let Alex slip away quietly, as if this was just another scandal to brush under the rug. I needed the world to see him for who he truly was, the man who had ruined so many lives. The man who had lied and cheated his way to the top. And I knew exactly where to do it. Tonight's gala would be the stage for me to make everything public. The thought of standing in front of everyone, the very people who had admired Alex, and revealing the truth filled me with a mixture of dread and exhilaration. This was it. The moment of reckoning. It wasn't just about him anymore, it was about me, my children, and every single person who had been lied to, manipulated, or hurt by Alex's actions. I had spent days preparing my speech, knowing that this was the only opportunity one would have to speak directly to the crowd. The gala was a prestigious event and everyone who was anyone would be there, doctors, hospital staff, philanthropists, and Alex's colleagues. It would be a celebration of the hospital's achievements, of Alex's career, and his supposed contributions to the medical community. But I was about to change all of that. I was about to make sure that no one would ever look at Alex the same way again. As the night of the gala approached, I felt the weight of what I was about to do settling on my shoulders. The moment would be public, dramatic, and irreversible. I knew that once the truth came out, there was no going back. Alex's career would be over. And so would his carefully crafted image of the perfect, upstanding doctor. But I couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything I had discovered. That evening, I walked into the hospital's gala in the black dress Alex had once called too flashy for a woman like me. It was a dress I had worn many times before, but this time felt different, more symbolic than ever. It wasn't just fabric and thread. It was a statement. All eyes in the medical elite turned toward me as I entered the room, but no one knew that I had prepared the perfect unveiling. The gala was supposed to be a celebration of success, a night of honor and recognition. Alex had been planning for this moment for months, confident that his accomplishments would once again shine in front of everyone who mattered. He had no idea what was about to happen. The thought of him basking in his success while I carried the weight of his lies was unbearable. This was my moment. It was time for the world to see the truth. Though Alex had been suspended from his position and the authorities had already begun their investigation, I still didn't want this to end quietly. That was never the plan. I needed to make the truth public in front of everyone, especially at the gala, the very event where Alex had been hoping to be honored. He would stand before the crowd, still surrounded by admirers, thinking he was untouchable. I was going to expose every secret, every lie he had hidden behind his perfect facade. Tonight, the world would see him for who he truly was. The gala hall was bathed in soft golden light, the sound of clinking glasses and polite conversation filling the air. People mingled, dressed in their finest attire, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. I could feel the eyes of the crowd on me as I made my way to the center of the room, but I held my head high. No longer did I feel like the woman who had been shattered by betrayal. Tonight, I was someone else entirely, stronger, more determined. This was my fight now, and I wasn't going to let anyone or anything stand in my way. Alex stood before the crowd, his arm draped possessively around Claire, his mistress. They were celebrating his success, laughing, as if everything was perfectly normal. His smile was wide, his demeanor confident, but he couldn't have been further from the truth. He was oblivious to the impending collapse of his carefully constructed life. He hadn't yet realized that tonight, everything would change. After Alex finished his speech, I stood up, steadying myself for what was about to happen. Every step I took toward his table was deliberate, calculated. I felt the eyes of the room following me, but I didn't flinch. This was my moment of reckoning, and I was going to take it. As I reached their table, I saw the confused glances of the people around us. Claire's eyes narrowed when she saw me, but Alex just smiled, thinking nothing of it. Without hesitation, I placed the cream-colored envelope in front of Alex. The room went silent. I looked at him, unafraid, and said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me, "Congratulations on your freedom, Alex. I think you'll find this interesting." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of everything I had uncovered. The silence that followed was suffocating as everyone in the room waited to see what would happen next. Alex reached for the envelope, his hands trembling slightly as he opened it. His eyes landed on the DNA test results. For a brief moment, he froze and his confident facade cracked. His face went pale as he read the documents, his eyes darting across the words, unable to process what he was seeing. "This is impossible," he whispered, his voice shaking. "I made sure my sperm was never used in any of the IVF treatments. I falsified medical records. I lied to you for 15 years about the very existence of our children." The words were out now. The truth had been laid bare for everyone to see. It was a shocking revelation, but it was only the beginning of the destruction that was about to unfold. The room was stunned into silence. People exchanged uneasy glances, some looking from Alex to me, unable to believe what they were hearing. Not just about the affair or the financial fraud, but about the manipulation of medical records. Something Alex had been hiding for years. It was a scandal that would shake the very foundations of his career and reputation. I wasn't finished. I scanned the room, my gaze sweeping across the faces of the people who had once admired him, who had once believed in his success and integrity. I smiled confidently, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Go ahead. Celebrate, Alex," I said, my voice calm and deliberate. "Because today, not only will you be exposed, but these people who trusted you, will know the truth. And I will make you face all of your actions." Just then, the doors to the room opened and legal personnel along with law enforcement officers entered. They had been prepared for this moment, for the exact moment when Alex's lies would be revealed. The tension in the room was palpable, and the mood shifted from disbelief to anticipation. Alex looked up, his face a mixture of confusion and panic, but it was too late for him to regain control. The authorities had arrived, and they were there to make sure he faced the consequences of his actions. The officers approached him, their presence undeniable. They handcuffed him right there in front of everyone, his protests falling on deaf ears. His world, which he had worked so hard to maintain, was crumbling in front of his eyes. His mistress Claire stood frozen, her face pale with shock, realizing too late that her lover's empire had fallen apart. As Alex was led away, I stood there, watching it all unfold. My heart pounded in my chest, not from fear but from the incredible sense of relief that washed over me. This was my victory. I had one, not just for myself, but for my children who deserved to know the truth. They deserved to grow up in a world where honesty mattered, where they weren't born into lies. I wasn't the perfect wife anymore. But I didn't care. Perfection had been a lie, a farce I had tried to maintain for so long. What mattered now was that I had reclaimed my power. I was stronger, more resilient than I had ever been. I had faced my worst nightmare and emerged from it unscathed. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The applause that followed as the officers escorted Alex out was not for him. It was for me. For the woman who had fought back, who had exposed the truth, who had refused to let her life be dictated by someone else's lies. As the crowd erupted in applause, I knew this was the beginning of something new. Something better. I had taken control of my destiny, and I was no longer afraid of the man who had tried to destroy everything I held dear. Conclusion. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about resilience, about standing up when the world you thought you knew collapses beneath your feet. It's a story of rebuilding from the ashes of lies and learning that even the most perfect lives are often built on a foundation of sand. In the end, the truth came to light and I gained my freedom. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming what was mine, my family, my identity, and my future. So, what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings about this story. Feel free to leave a comment or share your feedback. What did you learn from it? How did it resonate with you? Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe so you won't miss the next story coming your way. Your support means everything and helps me continue sharing these stories with you. Thanks for sticking around and listening all the way through. Can't wait to see you next time.